Hey, security peeps. It is Renee Small here in another special edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity with our favorite peak performance coach, Dr. Dan Schaefer. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Renee. How's everybody else doing today? Hopefully well. Staying safe.
Staying as safe as we can be. So, as I shared in the past, Dan and I are going to be having these live stream discussions as we are all dealing with COVID-19. Dan's background has been with helping executives and managers and professional athletes and student athletes and people of all various walks of life on being their absolute best in dealing with a lot of challenges like the ones that we are going through right now. So one of the questions that continues to come up, and Lord knows it's come up for me, is around what's keeping us awake at night. So Dan, I know we're going to be answering that question soon as people chime in with their various, what's keeping them up at night. But what have you been hearing from your various clients as what is keeping them up at night, and how can we overcome some of the challenges that we're having today?
Well, the pressure on cybersecurity people never stops. I mean, it's unending. It's like Niagara Falls. It keeps coming. So, it's how do you prepare for that? How do you get used to that? The things I've heard about frequently are, and I want to just flip back to when Hewlett-Packard was merging with Compaq, and I worked with senior executives right under Carly Fiorina. There were a couple of issues that came up. Certainly, their own performance in their role within that global company, but also there was something in the background that continued to resonate, and it was, what about my future? What about me? How do I plan? Do I have a safety net in the event that in a merge I'm left out of the picture? Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that comes up is, and the reason a lot of this happens, Renee, is I deal privately with people. Mm-hmm. So it's what, when somebody puts up a program of performance enhancement, talent management, what's frequently left out is the me part, and we deal with the me part. So winning is very important to people. They want to win. The question is that, when I come back to working with golfers, for example, I tell golfers, take a golf ball and write JTS on it, just this shot. Take one shot at a time. But so that's the challenge of people today. But also, and we've talked about this before, the importance of individuals being in 2025. Where are they? What do they see their dream being? Both. And what challenges do they see coming down the pike in 2025? Mm-hmm. Then the question is looking at a person's own A game. What's your A game like? I've spoken to professional athletes, quarterbacks, and I'll say, football is about your A game. They said, it's a team sport. I said, after you bring your A game. So you bring your A game over the white line. So what's the A game of your cybersecurity people? And then I just got off the phone with a client. We're talking about looking at things differently, looking at a plan and saying, what's missing? When we review when we do an MRI and CAT scan on an insurance program, for example, I have people who will look for what's there. But other people say, no, I assume that what's there is okay. I'm looking for what's missing. Mm-hmm. So it's how do we approach that? And it comes back to working with your mind game. What type of issues come up? So I'm curious about what keeps people awake at night. And some people I know may not tell us on this call, if they're identifiable, what keeps them awake at night. But as we've said, if they give me a call and talk to me about it, they'll know in a heartbeat if I can help them.
Yeah.
But it's what do I do? When somebody sits down just before they close on that and say, what do I do now? What happens next? What do I have to do next? And those are the issues, because it's all down to personal issues.
Well, I know sometimes I can tell you, for me, I'll have a couple weeks ago in particular, I had so many projects going all at once. And I was very I think I probably told you, I did tell you. I said I couldn't even, I would wake up in the middle of the night wondering what I forgot. Like what, I couldn't sleep because I was trying to make sure that I had all these balls juggling in the air, and then throw on top of it, the reason why we're having these discussions is you have COVID-19. So on a regular, typically, this is from a recruiting perspective, this is like recruiting busy season. So in a regular world, normal world, a lot of folks that are in corporations or companies that typically have a regular or your standard quarter in your standard cycle, people tend to get their bonuses around March, and then they move. So a lot of movement happens between like January and June in recruiting, specifically right between January and say April, May. And then you'll get some additional stuff with like the college grads and things like that in May and internship in June and things like that. But the height of the season is kind of like right now. So I had a couple things juggling, and then additionally, now, pile on kids being at home and all this other stuff. And I would wake up like, who did, what did I forget to do? like I'm supposed to call somebody, or I was supposed to schedule something. I was supposed to do something, and it was freaking me out. So I know you told me immediately to finger and
yeah,
what is it?
We have to make sure we leave enough time for that relaxation piece, because I've spoken to so many people, previous clients who've come back and gotten this refresher piece that we did a couple of weeks ago. But I think that, I find a lot of people take everything that's going on in their life and they throw it into a stew pot. Mm-hmm. And, when you look in the stew pot, you see the meat and the potatoes and the carrots and the onions floating around. And then when they want to deal with an issue, they have to dig into the stew pot. We've worked with this silo system, which I think is incredible, because what it does is it allows a person to put in separate silos different issues that they're dealing with and post them up on the wall someplace. Because what happens is you don't even have to read what you put in a silo. Your subconscious mind reads it, and it reads it, and it keeps it in order. And then using some forms of relaxation, focus, and concentration, it allows somebody to be able to deal with those things in a much more effective way. That's for the individual, but what about their team? I talk about, I'm sure that hackers are not operating all the time by themselves. They probably have teams of people with strategy. Well, what is your team doing? How is the team dealing with this? We put together this program for Corona, which is helping people deal with stress in the workplace. And how do you reach out to your team to do that? Well, we have a Zoom call to about an hour that takes people through relaxation strategies, show them how to cut their stress down just by blinking their eyes or putting their thumb and index finger together. But it's done subconsciously, just like an athlete works, Mm-hmm. So it's getting people to say, I need to get this information. I don't want to wait another week for it. Let's see what we can get now.
Right. So Colin, a couple people are chiming in. Colin says he's happy to be here, working from home, so it's a small window of opportunity. So we talked a little bit about how people are at home now, so they get more opportunity to actually watch this kind of stuff, which is great. Jonathan, I'm waiting for a response from him, but he said that he would like help with better hand hygiene measures. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about what that means in particular. And then we just have some other folks that are on the call or on the live that chimed in and said that they're here, happy to be here, and things like that.
Good.
So Dan, what are you seeing? You talked about 2025, and I think that that's something that I don't know if people fully grasp when you say, 2025. So explain a little bit more to people about what that means when you say that your clients are currently in 2025. Okay.
Imagine for a moment that I gave you a magic wand and you wave the magic wand And when you waived it, you were already in 2025, the year 2025, April of 2025. What does that look like to you? Where are you? What company are you working for? What does your team look like? What challenges are you facing? All of those things. What happens is that because you're giving yourself permission to dream about 2025, you move toward it. Your subconscious mind drags you toward it, and it's amazing how it works. It defies conventional wisdom, and it is definitely not goal setting. It's about dreaming. How do I dream 2025? And what we did frequently was say to people, particularly when we were working with HP, is to say to a client, tell me what 2025 looks like, and let's look backwards for anything you think that could either distract you or impact on you reaching that 2025. And that's where we've talked about this for a long time, is that I take a client out to 2025 and we talk about it. And they have a form, a survey they fill out. They describe 2025 for me and for themselves. And then we look backwards from there for anything you could possibly do to foul that up. Anything. And that's where it comes back into the marketing of mistakes or omissions. And that's one of the things that we're looking at today with the stress that people are on is errors, omissions, accidents, and safety. High risk areas, particularly when people are under stress. But again, it may simply be, how do I move from one company to another? How do I function within the company I'm in? How do I deal with the challenges of the people I'm dealing with, the psychology of the workplace? I can be really good at my job, but I may have some challenges in managing or interacting with the people who I report to. So it's, how do you get 1,000? What people do with me is they give me 1,000-foot view of their company. They give me an organizational chart, and I'll say, here's where I want to be, and how do you get there? What steps do you take to get there? Because at the end of the day, what really keeps people up at night also is themselves. What am I going to do when this changes, or if it changes? So they see themselves, interestingly, as the CEO of their own company. How do they see themselves as the CEO of their own company and operate in that way? And realizing that once they agree to that or accept that every decision they make becomes a business decision. What they, student athletes, what they eat, what they drink, what they smoke, who they're seen with, who takes their picture, what they post on Facebook or on social media, all of those things are going to impact on their future. At some point in time, somebody's going to come back and say, let's go back and look at Facebook and see what this guy's posted. Hello? So it's helping people to be more effective. And then there are keys to a competitive edge that people look at. And I can go through, I'll just bring them up here for a minute. But so any more notes, anything, anybody?
Yeah, we have a question here from Rohit. He said, quarantining alone has its benefits, but I've been catching myself thinking about past problems that are no longer relevant.
Okay. When, it's interesting how much this relates back to sports. When I would talk to my quarterbacks about the coming year, I'd say, let's take a look at the published schedule for the year and see how you talk to yourself about each team that you're playing against. And we'd mention a team, and he'd immediately flip back to something that happened in a previous game.
Now, who was this, Dan?
Huh?
Which, you said a professional athlete?
Yeah, when I worked with my quarterbacks.
Okay.
They think of something that didn't work well for them. Mm-hmm. So it becomes important to be able to separate it. But what I would say is that to identify the second that you're distracted by these past events, put the past event on a Post-it note, stick it on a wall someplace, and decide at some time of the day you're going to go back and review those things. You can't change what happened in the past. You may learn from what happened in the past, But still, it becomes very important to be able to talk that way.
Yep. Cameron says, keeping in consideration the current situation with hackers on prowl, how do we safeguard small businesses like ours? What can we do, as we have had several break-in attempts on their website?
That, I guess, first of all, I'm not a cybersecurity person. You know, Renee knows I'm happy that my computer turns on and I can legally. But again, is it possible to anticipate those attacks? Anticipate how they're trying to get into you, how they're trying to attack you. You know,
Yeah.
it's you have to be right all the time, and they only have to be good once.
Yeah.
So is that, and again, how do you approach the small company? So question, are you operating by yourself? Are there resources that you need to make this work? I don't know.
Yeah. Collins says, with the current situation and working trend, what do you think is the best way forward if you were thinking about making a shift to another position, remote versus on-site positions?
I would say and the biggest issue that I have with folks in transition is most of the people I work with, when we initially start, it's hard for them to describe what they do well. So I think having a dream about where you want to be, if you're thinking about a transition, is to find out what you think that would look like. And then you have to do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are the strengths that you have? What do you really do well? What are your weaknesses? I don't like weaknesses. I don't like the word, but it's developmental opportunities. Where can you develop? And I know, for example, I use a competency model for many companies to come back and say, here are the things that are really important for somebody in your position, and how do we make that work? So those two things come in, and then it's to have the people that work with me. I'm at their back, so I have no emotion going into a situation. They have a lot of emotion in change and transition, but I get 1,000-foot view, and when you take emotion out of significant changes, they become more manageable. So I would want to know, if you're thinking of the change, what does it look like? Put it down on paper, draw it out, sketch it out, and then then you do a SWOT analysis on each one. What gets in the way? What are your contacts? If you're talking about changing from one company to another, you really need to look at the contacts and the people you're going to be talking to, and what you're going to say to them when you talk to them, when they interview you. Is it going to be? I would ask everybody what they think the impact of this remote Zoom call concept is. How many more people are going to revert to this? I think a lot. You know, I mean, to tell you the truth, it's a lot easier to be sitting here in Roswell, New York, rather than driving to Washington, D.C. and sitting in the TV studio. So it's really it really is, I believe, going to change. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to change, but I think people are getting used to doing business this way. Yeah. I know what my clients say are.
I think it's going to change too. I think it's one of the things that cybersecurity professionals have been asking for a lot, especially because those are the professionals that I deal with the most. And I believe that even the leaders have asked their leadership for more flexibility with candidates for a number of reasons. As we all know, there's a quote unquote talent shortage. I don't believe that it's a talent shortage per se, but there's a limited number of cybersecurity professionals that have specific skills. And one of the things that comes up very often is people saying, pre-COVID-19, they don't want to drive 2 hours around the DC Beltway. They don't want to drive forever into San Francisco. They don't want to drive, if you're in some of these markets where, there is the commute is taking you 2 hours each way, that really starts to streamline the candidate population for leaders. And now that it's forced, you get just much more flexibility on both sides. So I think that people will start to realize, like, hey, this is working. People likely are putting in more hours. I read an article the other day about people putting in like 3 extra hours a day from being at home because, you have more time when your kids aren't bothering you. But in any event, I cannot see it going back to what it was, in January. I just can't see that happening. So Justin makes a comment here. He thanks Collins for asking that same question about changing occupations. He's changing occupations soon and is worried that the job he's looking for now won't exist in 6 months. So Dan, it kind of goes to the point that you were just making around transitioning professionals.
It really comes back to it's very hard. It's like somebody trying to diagnose a situation and come up with a treatment when you can't see the person to talk to. So there's a lot of information I would want to know about the job he's going to. I don't know the questions he asked the people. I don't know what they're looking for. What happened to the person before him? Is it a solid job? There are so many possibilities that people deal with. What if he's replacing somebody? What happened to the person who he's replacing? Where did they go? What did they do?
Yeah.
So, but again, it's something that keeps you awake at night. The fundamental question I get from people is, what do I do now? Yeah. And this is not, and we should make it clear, we've done this every time we've done this program. I'm not a therapist, I'm a strategist.
Yeah.
So I take the psychology of the workplace and apply it to somebody's movement going forward. So when you go into a meeting, what do you say? Do you plan to do that? Do you plan effectively? I mean, if people look up my website, there's a whole presentation there called A Course of Myths. You want to look at that and make sure that you're not operating your business or your own personal life based on any of these myths.
Yeah.
It's costly.
Dan, I think your internet connection seems like it's going. I'm getting, you're seeming kind of choppy. I don't know if you have other tabs open or email or anything that might be slowing everything down potentially.
Nope.
You're okay. Well, we'll keep going until hopefully we can still hear you.
You just stop.
So the next question that came in was from Derek Waters. And he says, what advice would you give CEOs regarding the fear of employees returning back to the work environment?
Boy, that's a great question. I really don't know. I think everybody's facing it. They're talking about people coming back in the work environment. I imagine they're putting a tremendous amount of testing on people who come into a workplace. How do they protect people? How do they deal with the anxiety people have about catching this virus from somebody else? How do you make sure that somebody is following the proper hygiene? I don't know. But that's certainly something that, an HR department of a company, I know HR companies now that are looking at this issue to provide testing in work environment. But again, there's so many things that are unknown here that people just have to be, I believe, very careful of themselves and monitor their own performance and how they protect themselves and protect their families and where they go. I mean, the sheltering in place it's working out, but there are some challenges. If you deal with, I have a client who's got with a European company. And the people who are here in New York are comfortable with this, but the senior management is not comfortable not having somebody in their office at their desk. And that comes back to the issue we talked about last week, the remote management. There's a whole system to manage people remotely. I believe, and we've used it around the world with a group of people. And it really comes back down to saying, I want to move from a management culture into a coaching culture. And to do that, the people who are in leadership really have to know what they do well. And then they move right into a system that works extraordinarily well. Because I've had people that have remote teams all over the world. And how do you manage them if you can't see them? Well, there's a way to do that.
So Dan, you still sound really choppy. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to close this and then maybe maybe even come back tomorrow or come back later, because.
Well, I can come back later. I can come back tomorrow. We just have to figure the time.
Okay. So because of the, I can't really hear Dan that well, we are going to wrap up this special edition. And then what we'll do is we will come back again. I'll share with everyone on LinkedIn the time, and if we're doing it later today or if we're doing it tomorrow, the time. And we will get Dan back on to answer the rest of the questions. Because Dan, there was another question coming through. Cameron asked the same follow-up question around, even if he's the one who asked about the small business dealing with cybersecurity challenges. And he said, even if we have enough safety measures in place, how do we deal with mental stress, even if everything is going fine? And I think that is a prime question that many of us have. And I want to make sure people get that answer.
That's a great question. Yeah. Why don't we open up when we come back?
Yep. So we'll open up with that one when we come back, Cameron. And we will take off for today. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And then we'll be back. I will make sure to post it out there on LinkedIn exactly when we'll be back with Dr. Dan. Hey, thanks so much, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Renee.
All right. Bye.